Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into the story of the automobile. And let me tell you, it's about so much more than just getting from A to B. This machine completely reshaped our world, our cities, our economy, our whole way of life. So, picture this. It's 1899, and this is what people thought of the first cars. They called it a queer-looking thing. I mean, it was basically an ugly, clunky version of a horse-drawn carriage, right? But they also knew it was the future. They were just waiting for some genius to come along and, whip it into shape. They had no idea just how much it was about to change, well, everything.
Okay, so the story of the car doesn't actually start with an engine. Nope, we gotta go way, way back. Thousands of years, in fact. Because it all starts with this deep down human need to go faster, to conquer distance, and to connect the world. I mean, think about it. Long before we had cars, empires were built on speed. And the Romans, they were the absolute masters. They built this incredible network of roads, super direct, super durable. Their postal system, where they'd swap out horses at stations, was so good it actually outlasted the entire Roman Empire. It just goes to show you, power has always been about moving fast.
So you can think of the car as this giant puzzle that was being put together piece by piece for centuries before anyone even knew what the final picture would look like. You had all these key innovations in making wagons and carriages. Like somebody invents leaf springs, and boom, suddenly the ride is way more comfortable. Then you get better axles that don't need to be greased all the time. Each one of these was a critical piece of the puzzle, laying the groundwork for the horseless carriage that was just around the corner. All right. So all these pieces are in place. The 19th century is wrapping up, and suddenly, bam, there's this explosion of ideas. And a huge race kicks off to figure out one thing. What's going to power this new machine? It's steam versus electric versus gasoline. The first great engine war was on. So you've got three contenders in the ring. In one corner, you have steam. It's powerful, it's proven technology. Big fans included racers and even President Teddy Roosevelt. In the other corner, you have electric. It's clean, it's quiet, super easy to operate, a favorite of city doctors and women. And then there's the underdog, the gasoline engine. It was noisy, dirty, a real pain to get started with that hand crank. It really didn't seem like the obvious winner, did it?
But here's the crazy part. While all this drama is happening with steam and electric and gas cars, the real king of the road was something totally different. The bicycle. Get this, in a single year, Americans bought 900,000 of them. The bike was what really got the masses moving and taught people the basics of personal transportation. And just look at the difference. It's absolutely staggering. You've got nearly 1 million bicycles being made. And then way down here, you've got automobiles. We're talking well under 1,000 cars a year in the US back then. It really puts it in perspective, right? The car was still just a toy for rich people.
And then one man came along and changed the entire game. He didn't just build a better car. He invented a whole new way of building, period. And that's what really put the world on wheels. So before Henry Ford, you have to understand how insanely complex building a car was. We're talking about putting together something like 5,000 separate parts. It was slow, it was super expensive, and you needed these master craftspeople to do it. It just wasn't scalable. So what was Ford's genius? The moving assembly line. He took that massive 5,000-part problem and just broke it down. He chopped it into hundreds of simple, tiny, repetitive tasks. And the result? It was revolutionary. Assembly time went from over 12 hours for one car down to just 93 minutes. And, of course, the price just fell through the floor.
But then he did something that was, for the time, absolutely insane. In 1914, he doubled his workers' pay to $5 a day. People thought he was crazy, but it was a brilliant, brilliant move. Why? Well, his workers stopped quitting, and more importantly, he created customers. He paid them enough to actually go out and buy the cars they were building.
And the result of all this? 15 million. That's how many Model Ts were sold. It was an absolute phenomenon. The car went from being a toy for the rich to a tool for everybody. And just like that, the gasoline engine wasn't the underdog anymore. It was the undisputed champion, and it would stay that way for the next 100 years.
Okay, fast forward. After World War II, the car world basically splits right down the middle. You've got two completely different philosophies about what a car is even for, and it's all because of what was happening economically. So, on one side, you have America. The war is over, confidence is high, gas is cheap. And what does Detroit do? They build these big, powerful beasts with tons of chrome and crazy tail fins. But then you look at Europe. They're rebuilding from scratch. They don't need flash. They need small, cheap, practical cars to get their countries moving again. They needed people's cars. And you know what car perfectly captures this split? The Volkswagen Beetle. It's this tiny, simple, efficient car from Germany. And somehow it becomes a massive hit in America. Why? Well, precisely because it was everything a Detroit car wasn't. It was the anti-car. It started this whole counterculture movement that said, hey, maybe bigger isn't always better. But that age of big engines and cheap gas, yeah, it wasn't going to last. The 60s, 70s, and 80s brought one shock after another. And these crises basically forced the automobile to grow up, fast. It went from a pretty simple machine to the complex, computerized thing we drive today. It really kicked off with cars like the Chevy Corvair. Now, it was a cool, innovative car with the engine in the back. The problem was its handling was tricky. It could surprise you, and for the average driver, that sometimes led to accidents. People started to wonder, hey, are these things actually safe? And that simmering concern just exploded thanks to this one young lawyer, Ralph Nader. He writes this book, Unsafe at Any Speed, and it's a bombshell. He basically accuses the car companies of caring more about cool fins and chrome than about keeping people alive. He single-handedly kicked off a safety crusade that completely changed the industry and brought in a whole new wave of government regulation. And it was like a 1-2-3 punch. First, you have the safety crisis in the 60s. That's when we start getting things like seatbelts and safer dashboards. Then, bam, the 70s energy crisis hits. Gas prices go through the roof, the era of cheap fuel is over, and suddenly those small, efficient cars from Japan start looking really good. And finally, in the 80s, you get the electronics revolution. Computers start taking over, adding brains to the brawn to manage the engine, improve mileage, and cut down on pollution. So, that brings us to today. After more than 100 years of perfecting this thing, where do we go from here? Well, believe it or not, we're right back where we started. The race is on again, just like it was in 1900. But this time, we're looking for a replacement for the gasoline engine. And, the big challenge here is that there's no magic answer. There's no silver bullet. We've got all these options on the table, natural gas, biofuels, you name it. But every single one has a catch, a pretty big one usually. Some still rely on fossil fuels, others would require us to rebuild everything, and some even create whole new environmental headaches. It's complicated. And when you boil it all down, you get to a pretty sobering truth. For all our incredible progress, the computers, the safety features, all the fancy tech, we are still almost 100% dependent on crude oil to get around. After more than a century, that fundamental fact hasn't changed a bit. So that leaves us with one last big question. We've spent over a century making the horseless carriage better and better. We've perfected it. So the question for all of us right now is this: are we going to be the generation that finally, truly reinvents it?